Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of AI Inside, the podcast where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout so much of the world of technology and beyond. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Howell, joined as always by Jeff Jarvis. I can hear you now. How you doing, Jeff?
Hello there. Sorry about that. I have Jason is like in 5 places in my life right now. I'm on YouTube. I'm watching the stream on Twitter, and there's Jason. Jason's everywhere.
You're checking
That's
all
good.
the things.
That's
I know.
good.
When I cut to you, I heard myself echoing in the background. I'm like, oh, is that me now or me then? Me
See,
in the past?
it's the Matrix.
Yeah, it is the Matrix. And you know what? I'm getting comfortable living in the Matrix. This is the year 2025. 2025 is the year where we realize we are living in a simulation. Before we get started, huge thank you to those of you who support us on our Patreon. That's Patron of the Week. Dan Merchant is one of the amazing patrons that support us each and every week. Just go to patreon.com/AI Inside Show if you want to take part in that. We really do appreciate it. And again, just a quick call out, leave us a review or a star rating on your podcatcher of choice. But the reviews are really helpful. We have gotten at least one that I've seen in the last week that is more current. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for, is to kind of freshen up the reviews and get some newer reviews. So even if you have an older one, renew it, refresh it, whatever. We really appreciate it. But let's jump in, because this is a news episode. We got a lot of news to talk about. And I think maybe we start with Google. And I say Google ahead of OpenAI, even though OpenAI is at the start of this news story as well. But Google's antitrust trial is, would you call it the punishments phase? I don't know. It's kind of like how can we punish you, Google?
The woodshed phase, yeah.
Yes, exactly. The company was found guilty of unlawful practices in online search and advertising in the U.S. And as a result, the Department of Justice has recommended, I kind of feel like it's not going to happen, but has recommended that Google, if we get our way, Google's going to have to unload Chrome. They're going to have to find a new owner for Chrome. And it sounds like OpenAI has an executive that testified at the trial, hey, we'd be interested. We'd be down. That's Nick Turley, head of product, who testified that the company would be interested in owning Chrome. Just saying, if you're selling it, we'd certainly be interested in owning it. What do you think about that, Jeff?
It's a stunt. It's just like Perplexity saying they're going to buy TikTok. It's now the way to punish everybody is to make them sell something, and then everybody jumps up and says, "Oh, I'll buy it." And it's a kind of ridiculous story cycle that we're in now. And OpenAI, I trust Google with Chrome a lot more than I would trust OpenAI, period. B, I think it's a stunt. I think it's just for but it worked. Publicity all over. We're doing it right now, but we're doing that because it was in the news all over. And so that's where it is. And C, I wonder what the real value is to OpenAI. Sure, it could insert itself in that browser, but hello, antitrust, it's the same problem that it tries to fix. Then it's even worse because the company will use it for its own purposes and not allow others in. Google has always allowed others in.
But that's a 20-year problem, Jeff. That's 20 years from now when they finally say, oh, actually, that was a bad idea 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, just like Microsoft and the browser in the past.
Yes.
Why browsers have been such a focal point, because I think they're our main entry into. I remember many years ago, at the beginning of the web, my son, we ran focus groups when I worked for Advanced Publications in Cleveland, and the people in the focus group said, there's this amazing thing on this online. It just has everything. It has the weather, it has sports, it has news, it has fun. What's that? It's called Netscape. And we've seen for a long time, people don't understand the brands that underlie the web and everything else. I think that's probably less the case now. But I think there's this kind of naive view among both regulators and media that the browser is everything. Whether it was Microsoft or whether it's now Chrome. So it seems like a kind of a silly moment in all of this. And it's serious stuff going on with Google. Absolutely. I see that Chris in the questions asked whether Google could make another browser. I don't know, because there is no decision yet whether this is actually going to be the path. It was a recommendation. And I don't know what limitations there might be. But once again, I would trust Google more than I would trust OpenAI.
Yeah.
And, what does it do to all the rest of the services? The browser is key to everything we use, to email and docs and drive and maybe not maps, translate. All these services we use are out of this hub of the browser. And if you try to split that off, it's like saying the phone company can own the handset, but somebody else has to own the phone. For those of you who remember the old days where those were two different parts, I'm sorry, I just dated myself.
And there was a wire that went into the wall.
Yeah, curly cord on it too. For you kids, I'll show you in my Jeff's museum later.
Well, I think what you were just talking about kind of illustrates both sides of it. You're kind of saying the browser, like it's long been seen as this very, very important thing, but I don't know that that's really, maybe the case anymore. Maybe I'm getting, your words mixed up a little bit, but also it is really important, and we do channel and funnel so much through it. And so I can see why a company like OpenAI might love to have Chrome as their kind of anchor for, especially when we're talking about the agentic AI ambitions, to have a browser that you can just then completely connect your AI service and all of those agentic qualities directly into. Perplexity has its Comet browser that it's doing this. I think Perplexity would be another, kind of interesting party to want to own it. I don't think that they've explicitly said, hey, we'd be interested, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. And nor do I think any of it matters, because I think at the end of the day, Google's not going to have to sell Chrome. That's my hunch. That would be to your point, the kind of tangled web of everything that is connected, that would interplay in that move, seems like a lot. And I know that the DOJ in a case like this, at least my recent understanding of this, is that they shoot for the moon, and often they end up somewhere in between where it was and where they're shooting for. And I don't think that place in between necessarily means Google has to get rid of Chrome. But
yeah, it's an entirely different DOJ than it was when this case was brought. So who knows what that'll mean in the long run. They're continuing on the theme that they had of Google bad, but we'll see. But you raised two other points that I think are really interesting, Jason. And one argues with the other. The one is that there's finally competition in browsers, right? Perplexity is going to create a browser, and they have reason to do so. And if OpenAI is hungering after browsers, it could make one. It wouldn't cost them much at all. It's trivial. So on the one hand, just as the argument is that this is anti-competitive and we have to pull it away from Google, there's competition. The other contrary argument is that we talk a lot about whether a generative AI replaces search. What if it replaces the browser? What if agentic AI replaces the browser in essence? And it makes the browser far less important because your pathway to applications and to information and to functions is going to be otherwise. It's going to be through command structures, new command structures, voice, and so on and so forth. Whether that happens or not, we can predict, till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But the idea that the browser, it's exactly the same as the Microsoft fight. The browser was the key to everything. And then it wasn't for Microsoft. They lost the browser war. There was competition, and there's competition still. So yeah, I want to agree with you that I don't think they'll be forced to do this. These days, I can't predict anything.
Yeah.
But the other thing that obviously bothers me is I'm a Chromebook guy. Right? And what does it mean to sell Chrome apart from, is that the browser alone? Is that the OS? What does that really mean?
Yeah. Good question. Good.
How's that? Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I want to hear what you had to say.
Just one other thing is the other day, it just occurred to me, when Google originally, you used to go to google.com and there was the blank on the page and you type that in, right? And when Google went to what's it called, Jason? The one bar or the one whatever?
Yeah.
When the address bar became everything, right? It was confusing. It confused me for about a week. Oh, was that an address bar? Is that where I go to put things in? And when I would go to the Google search page, it would go ahead and put it up into there to train me.
Yep.
And say,
Omnibox.
This is where you're doing everything. Omnibox, thank you.
Omnibox.
Well, so the Omnibox, the browser is not just a browser. The Omnibox is the path to all kinds of functionality. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
the browser is a fungible beast now.
When's the last time I went to a Google search page and clicked on the search area in the middle of the page and put my search in there?
Right.
Like it happens very rarely and randomly. It's and I couldn't even tell you what is the circumstance that takes me there, but everything that I do is in that Omni box. I mean, and what you're saying also really reminds me of the conversation that I had at Mobile World Congress with Google's Android head Samir Samat, when we were talking about a post-app world where agentic AI becomes, so prevalent. Is there a need for apps? Is there a need for applications when agentic AI can just kind of go to the places it needs to go to do the things? And I think Samir's point was also appropriate and spot on, which is that even in that world, there is still a need for companies, for brands, for destinations to have some sort of a kind of a place to go, or maybe they've got a brand that they want to convey, and that's how you do it. Like the agentic AI can do those things, but it might not necessarily mean that we don't have those other things as well, because they also serve other purposes too. So I don't know.
Yep.
I do see if obviously this was a publicity stunt on OpenAI's side to gain more of the oxygen from the PR room, which it's very good at doing. But no matter what, OpenAI guaranteed going to do the browser thing. I guarantee you they're working on it behind the scenes already.
And it's going to be trivial. In fact, tell OpenAI, tell the browser, tell the chat to make the browser software. I mean, it's fairly trivial, I think.
Well, yeah, and I guess what's coming to me right now also is that there's some overlap here between like how necessary is it to AI to have its own browser, in the same way that how necessary is it to AI to have its own piece of hardware like a Rabbit R1 or whatever. It's everybody's looking for these different ways to make it make it more of an immediate utility, and it seems to be doing all right in the form that it is right now. But got to explore it.
I think we should pay tribute to the browser was a paradigmatic shift. I was working at Delphi for one horrible month, which was Delphi Internet, before I got the hell out.
Remember that.
And they were going to have a GUI because everybody had a GUI, right? There was AOL and Prodigy and so on, and you had to have your graphical user interface. And then I remember the day when somebody came in and said, "You got to see this thing," and it was the browser, the first crude blue browser. But it immediately said that changes everything. That's a pathway to things, and that's what a browser is. It's not a program in and of itself. It's just a way to get to stuff.
Yep. Interesting stuff there.
Yep.
And then we were talking a little bit, I mentioned Perplexity. Perplexity comes up a lot these days on this show. I think this is interesting. Perplexity is working on some big deals right now. One of them we might actually hear more about tomorrow with Motorola. This was a deal that I guess Motorola has an event tomorrow. It's expected that the event is going to be about their new Razr phone, and according to Bloomberg, probably going to get some information around a deal that Motorola has struck with Perplexity to have its Perplexity agent preloaded on Motorola devices. Gemini, I'm guessing, would still be present on the device. I don't think that this is necessarily saying that Motorola would not have Gemini installed, and Google's Gemini is out and Perplexity is in. But I think this brings the option of another AI assistant, or at least the app, onto the device. And then there's Samsung, which apparently is in early talks with Perplexity as well. Right now, I think according to the case that we were just talking about, it was revealed that Samsung has a 2-year kind of licensing deal with Google. Samsung's been working really closely with Google on a lot of things, and one of them is bringing Gemini into Samsung phones. But it turns out Perplexity is talking and potentially making deals with Samsung to bring the Perplexity agent onto Samsung devices, potentially in place of Gemini. And as all of these court cases happen and start to kind of strip apart the status quo of how Google does its business and strikes its deals, this could be something that we see more of in the next couple of years.
So back to the prior conversation. I didn't expect this to be tied in, but it is. Let me ask you a question, because you're a pro phone user, right? You study phones and how they operate, and
Sure.
your use of them is critical to your research, right? When you think of doing something on your phone, what proportion of the time do you? I think these are three choices. Do you go directly to an app? Do you go to the browser? Do you go to the assistant?
Oh, that's a really great question. Trying to break it down. I mean, I probably, that's a fantastic question. I'll start with Assistant. I don't use the kind of baked in shortcut for Assistant very often.
Right, neither do I.
I mean, and I that's really slowed down. I think that was different when Google Assistant was more leveraged and kind of a little bit more dependable and new, because it was the new thing. I wanted to get in the habit, and I certainly had that habit for a while. I don't use it as much, and I definitely don't use it as much with Gemini. It's not something that I go to regularly. Every once in a while I do. I'm almost more inclined to launch the app, honestly, to do that, either with Gemini or with Perplexity, which
right.
I do launch Perplexity, and it does have the voice assistant capability inside the app. And so I will sometimes launch that. Am I gonna I could probably open up my Pixel and in the settings and assign the Perplexity voice agent as my main agent, but I choose not to. I couldn't tell you why. I think it's part of the reason is because Gemini is kind of tied on a little bit deeper level to the Android operating system. Like Perplexity's voice agent is great for search.
You could be called at an antitrust trial just for that comment.
But it's true. This has been Google's big, strategy for better or for worse. And I think it's starting to kind of bite them in the butt. It is the intertangled web. At the same time, I'm a consumer and I kind of want those conveniences. So that's part of the reason why I don't kind of remove Gemini from that placement and put Perplexity in its place. And then how often do I go to the browser? I don't know. That's almost always if I go to the browser, it's because I used the Google search on this, that's on the home screen to ask a question of something, or to, if I really need to go directly to a website, I guess I just put it in there. I don't know.
That's interesting.
It's hard to give concrete answers on that. I don't know how to answer that other than when I need to.
Well, so I'm an old fart, so I mainly go to the browser.
Okay.
There are
Okay.
certain apps that I'll use, obviously. There's the weather app or whatever, but I tend to, my reflex is what I'm saying, is I want to get somewhere, I want to look up something, I want to do, I go to the browser. If I'm using the app, it's really more voice search. I'm sitting at the dinner table, and how old is Brooke Shields now? I don't know. I'll ask. Hey, G, how old is Brooke Shields now? So that's really not AI. It's really not the agent. I don't think it's more just voice.
That's more of just voice search.
Yeah, it really is. So I'm not using the agents much at all. Which the reason I ask that answer is, what's the bet if you're trying to deal with Samsung? What's the bet of what the user use basis is going to be of these things?
Yeah.
Of a default agent versus a default browser. I don't know. But again, it goes back to our prior discussion. The browser may not be the for me, it's still the hinge point of everything. For you, it's not.
No, definitely not. The browser is definitely not the hinge point for everything. But I've got my feet in all different ponds, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
you're weird.
But I do think, and we talked about this a little bit last night on the Android Faithful podcast as well, about having a Perplexity as a voice assistant tied into my phone by default does eliminate, like I said, some of those deeper kind of connections to, say, Android operations or settings, or some of Google's kind of the special sauce that Google has integrated with their services into Gemini and stuff. So having Perplexity in that spot eliminates or reduces some of that functionality. But as we know in AI, everybody kind of has their favorites, or they have their AI models that they turn to for very specific certain things, and and their go-tos. And so that might not matter as much. It might not matter to every user the fact that when they use their voice assistant, it can't know what to do with turn the lights on in the living room or whatever, where Google's can. It might just matter that like 90% of the time when I want to use voice AI, search, it's because I'm researching or it's because I'm doing this thing. And therefore I want that to be assigned to something that has a different skill set that's more tailored to what I actually need, not, doing what Google thinks I need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good point, is that the assistant, aka agent, will be charged with having more knowledge about you. It will be more personalized, necessarily. And that'll probably be the killer, not killer app, what I'm trying to say, the characteristic that makes it win.
Right. It also has a lot of stickiness to it. OpenAI is really working hard on this right now. They're really kind of doubling down and opening things up as far as memory for users. And turns out that becomes really, really handy and helpful over time as the model learns what you're constantly looking for when you ask it to do this certain thing. That means as a user, that's less hoops I have to jump through to get the answers that I'm looking for. And I think this is just kind of an interesting fact is that the more we give into these models and get that memory, the more sticky those models become, because why would I want to take my toys and go over there when this one already knows so much about me? I'd have to start over again going over there. And I think our phones are going to get there too. And that'll be really interesting from that perspective.
Yeah. And I can already hear replaying some of the battles of yore. One is obviously privacy. It knows too much about you. How do you, what control do you have? And the other is the filter bubble argument will resurface. And the filter bubble argument was made by Eli Pariser, and then Axel Bruns wrote a book called Are Filter Bubbles Real?, in which he had lots of research that no, they're not. That Google was not, in fact, personalizing to the level that was presumed, was not putting you in a filter bubble. But an agent will. So what was worried about in a moral panic past will come back, perhaps with some cause.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we've got a whole lot more to talk about. We're going to take a super quick break, and then we'll talk a little bit about Demis Hassabis's interview on 60 Minutes. That's coming up in a second. Did you get a chance to see Demis's appearance on 60 Minutes?
No, I've been writing too much about the head of 60 Minutes quitting.
Oh,
different
60 Minutes story entirely. Yes. And I was not aware of that, actually.
Oh yeah, I was on CNN last night talking about it, actually.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. Well, yes, Google's DeepMind CEO did make an appearance on 60 Minutes over the weekend. And I think it's interesting because there were a lot of, fresh off of our conversation with Jan LeCun from Meta, there were definitely a couple of points throughout the interview where it was like, okay, I've heard that before. Jan was talking about this too, particularly the fact that that Demis was, basically saying, AGI, as people define it very differently or don't, is at least 10 years down the line. So Demis and Jan appear to be on the same kind of timetable as far as when they think this randomly defined concept of artificial general intelligence will actually happen. And it's not immediate. It's definitely somewhere down the line. But he did make the prediction that AI could potentially cure all diseases within this next decade. All diseases, that's kind of crazy to think. I feel like anytime you put all or nothing, there's at least a small amount of invalidation in my mind to something like that. Because really, all of them, maybe that's just an easy way to say most, but just say most would be probably where I would go with that. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that prediction?
I think even most is too far. It's a turbocharged view of technological solutionism. And the argument is that the internet really brought out solutionism, thinking it's going to solve everything and it's going to bring peace, and it certainly has not.
No, that's not.
But this is a whole other level where it's part of the AGI, ASI presumption that we're going to get there and it's going to be so amazing it can do these things, and it's being ascribed to it with no reason, no basis. Will it help with medicine? Yes. Will it help find different uses of molecules? Yes. Will it do things behind the scenes like protein folding? Yes. All that's amazing enough. But this just goes overboard in a ridiculous way, in my view. And I think it's harmful in the long run on two sides of it. It puts a target, from his perspective, it's dangerous, I think, because I think it puts a target on the back of the technology he's building. Well, it's going to fail. It's not going to reach the heights that it's been predicted to do. And on the other hand, it makes it more fearsome. Oh, it's all powerful. It's going to, it's God. It's not. Let's take the wonder that we can have with this on its level. Why does it have to be everything? It's irritating. And I respect him and I respect his work, and he's a genius at this stuff. I'm not taking any of that away. Just don't oversell it, man.
Yeah. Hard not to, I suppose, when you're that close to it, and
Well, I think they are.
Yeah, maybe they believe that they know something that the rest of the world does not. And I suppose
That's part of the problem. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
I think that sets up a distance that they haven't learned what happened in this period of the arc of internet hype. And this is is it just the internet hype was hypey enough? This is 10 times hypier. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was a lot younger when the internet was first, coming around. And I certainly wasn't as analytical at that time. I was probably caught up in the hype more than anything because I was very excited by it. But it feels that way from my point of view now. At the same time, it's really impressive, some of the accomplishments that have happened here, right? Like, he discusses DeepMind's AlphaFold mapped more than 200 million protein structures in a single year. If that was equated to the amount of time it takes traditional researchers to do their work prior to this, that would have been 1 billion years of traditional research time.
So
And
take the sale. That's
amazing.
Right.
That's absolutely amazing. And that gives the confidence to say, well, if we're doing that now, then what are we going to accomplish in the next 10 years? It's going to be, a millionfold where we are right now.
Yeah, presuming the hockey stick is applicable to everything in life, because it presumes the basis of if we do this much now, then you've given a definition of what this is, and then you multiply it by 100, and you say, well, that's everything. No, there's a lot of challenges in life.
Yeah.
And I'm glad the technology is, again, we're both boosters of this to the extent that it does the amazing things. But the high-end boosterism just drives me nuts. So,
well, Perplexity CEO Aravind Srinivas agrees with Demis, called him a genius after this interview, and says he should be given all the resources he needs to realize this goal. So that's by the way, Perplexity entering the conversation, it seems like more and more now.
Yeah. They're brilliant at PR. They are brilliant.
Yeah,
where OpenAI
really
obviously was brilliant because it took over the world and it's gotten all this money and so on and so forth. But just in terms of Perplexity is not as hypey. Oddly enough, right? I don't hear the AGI stuff quite as much from them. What I see is, we can do this, we can do that. Oh, we're going to enter in this conversation. We'll enter in that conversation. We're going to buy browsers.
Yeah.
We're going to buy TikTok. We're going to agree with our competitors. They just sneak into stories. Just brilliant.
Seems to be the case.
Yeah.
This next one you put in there, and I did not have this on my radar, and I thought this would be a really interesting conversation. The Trump administration considering a draft executive order that would direct federal agencies to integrate AI into K through 12 education here in the U.S., of course. It's in a very early form at this point, according to this article in the Washington Post. It would integrate AI into teaching, also administration tasks, create programs using AI technologies with partnerships with private companies and nonprofits and schools to create and promote foundational AI literacy. And yeah, interesting. I mean, this just seems to go deep. And obviously, I have not read the draft executive order in its entirety. I've just read this article to kind of get a general sense of what's going on here. But and I find myself a little conflicted because, on one hand, I think it's really important to recognize this like inflection point that we're in right now with technology, and to in many ways embrace it, get ahead, if not ride that wave. On the other hand, it feels so sudden and drastic to commit so quickly to the level at which this article seems to illustrate.
Well, I love the word they used in the Washington Post story. It is a pre-decisional. Which is a word I hadn't heard before. And I'm sorry.
The concept of a plan. It's a concept.
I have to do the joke here because the joke is obvious. But they're having, it instructs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to prioritize federal grant funding for training teachers, blah, blah, blah. So she's going to put A1 sauce in our schools. You see the story last week that she kept on calling AI A1. And so A1 sauce had a bonanza with that. And so we're all going to pour A1 sauce over our students. Yes. Having done the obvious joke. But it's the problem with all these executive orders is with the stroke of my Sharpie, I can change the world. And Lord knows in some ways he's doing it. But this is not that easy to just say, we're going to put AI into everything. And the irony here is and I'm trying not to get overly political, though my views are fairly known, while they're cutting into education in every other way possible.
Right. Well, and that's part of what feels so drastic, right? Yes. It's like on one hand, take an axe to all this stuff. On the other hand, let's replace it with AI.
Right.
And so deeply, like it just based on reading through this, it feels like such a deeply embedded kind of solution. Obviously, they're chasing down, countries like China who are pursuing, integrating AI into their efforts in education. And there's a big sentiment right now in U.S. leadership that we can't let China win the AI game. We've got to win. And so let's do it by every means necessary. And it's such a response. It would be such a response if it actually passed.
Yeah. And the fear, I think, is that if you're a teacher, they're going to come and say, well, yeah, okay, we just gave you 20 more students, but no problem. You got AI.
Right.
Preparation's hard, curriculum's hard, but you got AI now. So this makes your job easy. And of course it doesn't, not at all. This morning I watched something that's still going on right now at William and Mary College. They did something about education and AI. And my friend Matthew Kirschenbaum, University of Maryland, and Rita Raley from UC Santa Barbara had done a piece in the Chronicle of Higher Education about whether AI will kind of ruin universities. And the joke today was, well, AI doesn't need to. It's happening elsewhere. But not a joke. But there's concern in the academe at that level, at the university level, about the relationship to these big centralized companies, about the resources that are provided or not provided, about the freedom that academics will have to do things, and whether they were talking about whether they could run a model under the desk, which in a way maybe you can do with some of the stuff we're seeing. And so there's big concerns at an educational level about AI all around. Nobody is saying it's not amazing. Nobody's saying it's not a tool that we should use. Nobody's saying we shouldn't teach our students. But this presumption that, okay, I can pour the A1 sauce into a syllabus and I'm done is kind of ridiculous. But there is a demand out there. So at Stony Brook, I wrote a syllabus for a course in AI and creativity. And last I knew, a week ago, it already had 91 students signed up. So there's a popular demand and desire for this stuff. And so I think that's great all around. Just do it smartly. Don't do it as if you think one signature and it's done. That's all.
Yeah. reactively and swiftly. Although that's proving to be kind of a hallmark of where we are right now is reactively and swiftly, for better or for worse. So yeah, like I said, I'm a little conflicted on this because I do. What I don't want is for the U.S. education to only see the bad potential of AI. It's, oh, well, students are going to learn to cheat, blah, blah, blah. Like, I do believe that AI and the current state of LLM and everything that it's developing into through agentic and beyond, like, I don't think this goes away. And I don't think that wishing it or pretending like it doesn't exist does any good. And I don't think that the younger generations coming up necessarily see it or will see it that way either. They're going to embrace it in a way that we older people are not going to have an easy a time doing, because it's not our normal, but it's their normal. And so, so there is a need to kind of embrace and kind of lean into that education piece. Just please do it in a responsible way that doesn't throw out
and that involves
a lot
the
of other good.
educators and involves the community and how it's done.
Yeah.
And not just say, you're not doing enough AI.
Right.
Do more AI.
We need more. Everybody needs an OpenAI subscription. There we go.
Right.
We've done it. Now do all your work on OpenAI. Okay, perfect. We've done it. We've done the AI thing. Well, that's one way to do it. We'll see. Let's talk a little bit about AI generations, because I thought this article, another one that you put in here, actually was I don't know. I appreciated reading through it. I'm having a hard time pulling it up here, but
if you go to archive.today, you can get it up.
On my
not subscribing to Business Insider.
Yeah, well, the problem is I try and pull up the archive links on Chrome, and for whatever reason, it never works for me.
Really?
I have to load it in an entirely different browser in order for it to work. Anyways,
that's weird.
That's a little behind the scenes. But you had put in this article that talks a little bit about AI eras, like the fact that, like, not too long ago we were in the simulation era, which is kind of the AlphaGo era, where models were learning through repeated and digital simulations and reinforcement learning, and there was all the AlphaGo, and playing the game, and whoa, can you believe that the game is capable of playing this so quickly and dominating and everything? That was the beginning. Then there was the human, or rather is the human data era, where we are right now, dominated by internet scale data, transformer models, of course, and where we reside right now. And then Google researchers David Silver and Richard Sutton have proposed, according to this Business Insider article, a major shift in AI development with a concept called the era of experience. And yeah, tell me a little bit about the era of experience and what they say.
So yeah, I thought this was interesting. And by the way, this paper is going to be part of a book called Designing and Intelligence from MIT Press. So it's a preprint from Silver and Sutton. Mm-hmm. And I agree with where this goes. The funny thing was, it repeats what Jan LeCun told us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. It's credit is given to Google, and that's nice because they don't get much credit in the AI world as much as they want. But this isn't just Google saying this. It's Jensen Huang, Jan LeCun, Google are all saying that the next phase has to be experience to teach AI reality. And that's where you're really headed. And it's going to happen
world models. Yep.
Yeah. It's going to happen through robotics, and it's going to happen through digital twins, and it's going to happen through data gathering through glasses and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's got to have some sense of cause and effect. And it doesn't have that yet. It doesn't know that. So that's going to be really interesting. So I think that the point of the paper is good. Business Insider does kind of a simplistic view that Google's told the world what for. No,
yeah, right.
This is where everybody's going. And I think we're waiting for that. I don't even want to say leap. I think it's just I'm going to use the word paradigm again. When I worked at Delphi way back when, they had a $5 paradigm jar. If you use the word paradigm, you had to put $5, not just a quarter, you had to put $5 in it. It was that much of a bad
It's an
word.
easy word to lean into. I
It
am so
is.
guilty of that. In the new paradigm, I've had to
Right.
try and back off of that word. To be honest.
So there will be, I think, a paradigm shift. Oh, $15 already. For this experiential layer, but I don't think we've seen it yet. Apart from robots obviously learning some things, but in ways we can't touch because we ain't the robot. Or digital twin factories, but we don't touch it because we're not seeing what those alternative futures are or anything like that. I don't think we've seen a consumer level version of experience yet. Where, it understands that the egg drops, it cracks. Right?
Right.
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 Well, and so I think that's what I'm kind of waiting for is the application layer of experience learning.
And it could be a ways away.
And it's not going to be like generative AI because I don't think a token-based world, I'm getting way out of my depth here, way out, folks. But I think this is part of what Jan LeCun told us in the wonderful interview, which if you haven't seen it yet, Jason will give you the link in a second, is that when you're just dealing with this abstraction of tokens, as I keep on saying, there's no meaning. Well, reality has meaning insofar as that's an egg and this is what its properties are and this is what can happen to it. And it has to associate it with that concept of egg. That's not the case in generative AI. It's not the case in machine learning as it stands now. It will be in robotics, right? Hand has to, if it's an egg, don't push too hard because it'll break.
Right. You push too hard, it breaks. Right.
Right. So I won't do that again. I've just learned that about the egg. Or whatever, however it abstracts that notion of egg, spheroid weight thing. And so this is all fascinating to me. I just love this next part of it, but I don't know when it's going to get to our actual attention past theory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think one thing that was kind of interesting to me that, I mean, is probably just a different way of explaining what you were just talking about is that the current era that we are in, we often talk about data scarcity, about the fact that these models are so hungry and they just need so much information to get smarter and smarter. But yet at the same time, we've almost fed it almost everything we can at this point. The only way that they get better beyond, leaps and bounds better into a kind of a new paradigm, as you put it, is by learning these skills and these limitations themselves beyond just the information that they've been fed, being able to kind of, interact with the world and learn by doing in the real world and encountering things that, the written word that travels over the internet doesn't even describe properly for a system like this to truly understand it. Maybe it understands it conceptually, but it doesn't understand it from a lived, felt sense, let's say, which is probably the wrong way to put it for a machine, lived sense. But anyways.
right, exactly. Yeah, well, even learning is a troublesome word. But this paper at the end of it emphasizes mainly not robotics, but agents.
Right.
And
yes.
says that's what in everyday life, personalized assistants will leverage continuous streams of experience to adapt to individuals' health, education, professional needs, and long-term goals. Perhaps most transformative will be the acceleration of scientific discovery. AI agents will autonomously design and conduct experiments. That's an interesting word there. It's constantly experimenting. What if I do this? What if I do that? Well, then it has to maintain.
Failed. Let me try again.
Right. That kind of that's learning in fields like material science, medicine, hardware design, and so on. So agents, what I hadn't seen before is now I get a better understanding, I think, of why we see this rush to agentic AI. It's not just because it's the next thing. It's not just because it gives us cool things. It's the next training.
Yes.
That the agents are the way it learns.
Totally.
And so it's a business model that every agent you have will add value to their machines, to their larger models.
Yeah, it's probably a small representation of this, but like the example that pops into my head is, we're thinking about agents that go online, like I need to buy those plane tickets. and agent, go do that. And so it goes onto the site and it goes through the standard, methods and learns the website and everything, but it encounters an issue that it can't work around. Is the agent does the agent stop there, or does the agent, like humans often do, stop, pause, and think like, okay, what is a way around this hurdle? How could I possibly, get to this from a different perspective and work myself around it? And maybe that's a legitimate way, and maybe it's an illegitimate way. But from a human perspective, we don't just like start, face a hurdle, stop. We kind of think around these things, and in so doing, we teach ourselves alternative pathways and alternative ways to see and understand the world when those pathways work or when they don't. And I don't know how that connects with this exactly. It's just kind of what popped in my head is like, I think when I think of agents that do things in the current paradigm, it's like, did you buy the plane ticket? And I think maybe the agents down the road, a very easy challenge would be, no, I didn't. But here's how I figured out how to get around it and do it in this alternative, method or way.
So two things on that. I love our discussions. This is fun because we go off into other things. So I found a paper yesterday that I didn't put up on the rundown because it was irrelevant to us. Though funny that now I see. I'm trying to see if I can find it in my history. That explained why it's so difficult to search plane. Can't find it. Plane fares. And it went through all of these charts. It saw the level of how many flights there are, possibilities there are from one city to another, and then all of these code variants and fare variances, and then trying to compare them all. So to then tell an agent, it sounds like, agent makes plane reservation. Well, it's incredibly complex, right? And it's I think we're shorthanding all these tasks in life right now as if, the agent will do it. But we go with our judgment into what it is. Now, so the next thing you raised, which is interesting, is when you hit the barrier. And this happened when we talked to folks about art in this, is when it does the wrong thing. Is that good or bad? Is that a lesson learned, as we were just saying?
Right.
Right. And I think it was Rita Rayleigh in this from UCSB at this event this morning at William & Mary. I think it was she who said that the creativity is leached out of the models because they've modified it down so that there's no unpredictability. Because unpredictability is where you get to problems, hallucinations, all that kind of stuff, right? So you've got to leave in mistakes to learn, right? So you've got to tell it to go off and find the plane ticket, and it doesn't find the plane ticket, and then it has to. That's part of the process of learning is failing, and it's really
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. In the human experience, so much is learned through failure, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable. But that's part of the reason why you learn so much from it. It's profound,
right?
And so that's necessary. And do we as humans who have created this thing, do we have the patience for failure with these systems? And it's, largely it seems like people express that they don't, because they continue to harp on AI systems that aren't 100%, information accurate 100% of the time. They're just not going to be that way. Same as humans. Humans aren't either.
Right.
We're patient with humans because we realize it's part of the human condition to be imperfect, but we aren't with the machine. And maybe we need to give the machine a little bit more grace than we do right now.
Well, again, if it can't fail, it can't learn. If it can't fail, it can't get that experience. And so, do we have that tolerance for that failure? How do we build that in? Because I think we have this idea that the machine is a machine, so it can't make mistakes.
Interesting stuff. Now this next one, you put in another link here. Did you want to talk about it real quick?
Only parenthetically is that as Business Insider gave Google credit for this thing that we just spent last 10 minutes talking about, similarly, IEEE interestingly came in, because Google often is said to be behind OpenAI, behind others. IEEE came in and said Google succeeds with LLMs while Meta and OpenAI stumble. That's the first time I've really seen major credit being given by somebody of as much stature as IEEE, saying that just talking about the model, just talking about the performance. I don't really want to go into any depth here, but it was interesting to see a slight vibe shift there. Google's getting some good juice here.
There you go. You get what you
go
deserve,
Google.
You go Google. This next one, oh boy, got thoughts on this one. A 21-year-old former Columbia University student has raised $5.3 million in seed funding for his startup called Cluely. It's an AI tool designed to help users secretly, quote, cheat on everything. So exams, interviews, sales calls, first dates, as shown by the verifiably creepy promotional video that they shared on X that I'm pretty sure only incels will find appealing. The app concept was born out of founder Chungin Lee and co-founder Neil Shanmugams. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Their tool called Interview Coder that they developed while studying at Columbia University. Did they develop this for their work at Columbia University, or was this on the side? Because they were ultimately suspended from the university, and I couldn't figure out if this was something
I'm
that...
guessing that's a connection, but it's not clear.
Yeah, it's not clear. But anyways, the app was designed to allow users to cheat
They were
undetected.
embroiled in disciplinary proceedings at Columbia over the AI tool.
Right.
Then they both have since dropped out. So
did they create the tool on their own outside of the university, or was it something that they created as
It
part of
began
their
as a tool
studies?
for developers to cheat on knowledge of LEET code, a platform for coding questions that some in software engineering circles consider outdated and a waste of time. So maybe it was their way to just say, yeah, but this goes to the definition. What is cheating? Is it cheating to use a calculator, right?
Right. And that's kind of part of what they're saying.
Thing. Right. Story I tell in my book that no one bought called Public Parts is that Mark Zuckerberg, when he was still in Harvard, he had an art class, and at the final in the class would have to be writing things about all of these pieces of art, and everybody knew that, and so they would do study groups, and so he organized a study group so that everybody was sharing the best of this, and the argument in the book that Zuckerberg made was that at the end, everybody did better. By using social, by not seeing it as competitive, by collaborating, they all learn more. And he had to study less. But he said that the grades for everyone in the class went up. So was that cheating, or was that a smart use of social collaborative thinking? Right? Is it cheating to use the technology, or is it a smart use of technology as an aid to you? I think we have to re-examine the notion of cheating. What does cheating mean? Is that merely? This is an interesting question. I just asked myself, but I'll ask you too. Is cheating being unfair? Is cheating being opaque?
Right.
What constitutes cheating?
Yeah, is cheating because I think when I think of cheating in my older kind of school time paradigm, I think of this is a question that wants to know my knowledge of something, and instead of sharing my knowledge of something, I'm sharing what I've written down or what I'm reciting or regurgitating from this thing in a moment where I was expected to know it instead.
But now
instead of knowing it.
Right. But now leave school, and you have a similar task.
Right.
Is it if you get the answer you need? Is that cheating by any means?
Does it matter? Right. If you're tasked with a job and you're able to do the job, does it matter if you knew the answer or if you sought the answer?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when it gets to dating, that is creepy because it's Cyrano de Bergerac. Am I really dating you, or am I dating the app?
I mean, that just felt like incredibly deceptive. That promo, promo video is the guy is sitting at a table with I don't know if it's a blind date or a first date with an attractive woman, of course, and she's asking him questions, and then you see his kind of like Terminator view coming up of the AI kind of coming up with the answers that he can feed to her. So he's essentially cheating on the questions that she's asking, lying about, being untruthful or dishonest about his age when she asks and says, well, you look kind of young. Are you sure you're 29? And he's being fed all this information. And then when she decides to walk out, then like the AI kicks in to like win her back. And so he recites that from a very heartfelt place and almost gets her to the point to where she finally, realizes I just need to get out of here and leaves. And it was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't think that does anything to endear me to what you're talking about, because I do agree with what you're saying. Like, there was a time when calculators were probably seen in the same.
Oh, they were.
Same perspective. Spell check. I mean, for my preparation for these shows, often I'm using AI tools to research, which I would have had to do manually and by hand earlier. I would have to like do a Google search and find the stories and collect them, open them in many windows, read through, pull information. Instead of taking 20 minutes to do that, I can take 5 minutes or maybe even less and have it pull back those things. And so you could see that as cheating for these shows, but it doesn't mean that I don't synthesize the information and do something that, I mean, these shows are a prime example. Hopefully you get benefit and value out of it. And if you do, then it's just an example that it kind of doesn't matter.
For those of you listening or watching, I hope you think that, oh, good, Jason and Jeff read some stuff that I don't need to read now. Of course, that pisses off media, hearing it said that way. But it's true. You don't have time to read everything. And maybe in some cases you say, oh, that's interesting to me. I'm going to look it up. I want to learn more. But that's your choice. It's the same exact problem we get to with search and media right now and social media right now is everything need not be the destination. So anyway, so these students are out. I say more power to them.
I mean, yeah, I bet they've got a pathway here. I think this will be interesting to watch. Just drop the manipulative kind of aspect, with like dating and stuff. Because
all right, how about this? The other example they give, the main example they give, is sales calls. Is that bad? Like only if you get lied to.
Yeah, I suppose it's bad if it's dishonest.
But if it's not, and it's targeted at what my needs are and it sells me what I want.
Yeah, totally. If I'm a sales agent, I'm going to go through training in order to effectively sell and effectively say the right things and effectively not say the wrong things and recognize cues and all this kind of stuff. If there's a tool that enables me to do that part of my job better, I don't see anything wrong with it.
I mean, the key to all sales things, there's a guy named Jeffrey Gitomer who writes sales books, who liked my first book. And so I watched how this operates. And same as in what I teach in journalism, it's listening. It's listening to people, understanding what their needs are, empathizing with those needs, and trying to come up with solutions for those needs. And if your solution is in fact legitimate and good, you make a sale.
There you go.
Right?
You got
That's
there.
okay. In fact, so we hear a lot about how this is going to come to customer service and phone mail jail and all the hell we go through, right? So the agent is reading the script, and, get off the damn script. And the fear is that AI will be even worse than that, but it may be far better than that. It may understand my need better. It may be more responsive to that need. It may be able to get to a solution faster.
I was going to say maybe faster.
But only if the AI is given the true agentic power to be, if it has agency to do so.
Yes. So. Yeah. Very interesting. Let's take a super quick break. Then we got a few more stories to round things out, including Oscars kind of becoming a little bit more welcoming to AI. All right, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences officially updated its rules to allow films that are using generative AI to compete for Oscars. So basically coming out with an official stance to say, hey, you know what, just because AI tools were used to, which by the way, it's, I mean, it's if it hasn't, just overtaken or at least, highly influenced how these movies are made, it's going to in a very swift move. But this just ensures that. But they're basically saying like, it's okay as long as there's a human involved. They say they do emphasize that the films where human creativity and human involvement are central will be more heavily considered. So not like requirement. But the filmmakers do not have to disclose the use of AI. That had been considered as one thing, and that's not the case here. So basically they're saying at the end of the day, what we've been talking about, AI is just another tool, and yes, you can use it. Just be responsible, and hopefully you've got humans also doing things on these things too.
You can still win a Pulitzer if you use a typewriter.
Yeah, right. Hey, that's a great example. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when word processing came in, it wasn't to the level of moral panic, but it was some fear that somehow this was too easy. Somehow this was going to change things, and it does change. It changed the way I wrote immensely because I wrote in the old typewriter days. Mm-hmm. So it changed immensely. It made it easier. It made it faster. It gave me more power.
It lowers the barrier. It levels the playing. It lets too many people in.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't quite gatekeep the way we used to have it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm a Howard Stern fan, and he complained when podcasts started. And I think I had this argument with him once on the air. Oh, podcast is nothing. You got to learn radio. You got to work your way up. Or just full old fart, right? And now you see the Joe Rogans of the world are huge, and even he has to admit that. Okay, well, yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
You don't have to work
Howard
your
Stern
radio.
Is he still rocking? I haven't listened to his show in many years.
He's on Sirius. You got to pay him the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's become an amazing interviewer. Speaking of listening.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I used to really be into his show. Used to love it. I need to check it out again. And then finally, okay, we're back to OpenAI, but I thought this was a good way to
lead back to AI.
They begin and end with OpenAI these days, but I thought this was a good way to kind of round out the show. CEO Sam Altman shared that users say please and thank you to ChatGPT. As we know, we've talked about it before, and this results in tens of millions of dollars in operational costs. Says there are significant energy costs to processing every word that is typed into a chatbot. Of course, please and thank you are also words that enter in there. He couldn't help himself in saying it's still a good idea to be nice because you just never know. Someday the robot might have mercy on your soul. Couldn't help but kind of get that.
Well, how many useless words? There's a paradox of text. So I'm writing this book about the linotype. And if you go back to the difficulty of writing in the past, whether it was by scribal quill, right, or by setting type one letter at a time, all that was really laborious, yet people were very long-winded then. And we get to this age of the internet, and especially things like Twitter, where we could go on as long as we want, and suddenly we come up with new ways to be as economical with our language as we can be. It's just kind of interesting to me. So on the one hand, I think that we were used to using the least words possible for both Twitter and Google search. And now AI comes along and says, no, say more. But every time you say more, it costs money. It costs energy.
I mean, it all costs money. I think people are dumping incredible quantities of data into their LLMs, and a short 1 or 2 letter nicety is not moving the needle here. I mean, I guess, in the sense that everything at this scale adds up to some large number, but large number by comparison to the actual large number that is the overall cost of all words and everything, it's just it's a speck. It's a grain of sand. So.
Yeah, and there's new efficiencies to be had. I remember when search and web came up with caching. That was a big deal, saved effort. Oh, speaking of which, there was a story that didn't make the rundown, but I just want to mention real quickly, because we talked about this a few weeks ago, where sites are being driven mad by AI scrapers coming in and costing them a huge amount of bandwidth. And so Wikipedia, the Wikimedia Foundation, finally said, oh, to heck with this. And so they've put up 461,000 freely accessible data sets. Here, don't scrape us. Go there, download it. Take it.
Okay. We talked about this not too long ago on the show.
And so I was talking about how if news and other sites did this and said, here, just take it. It's okay.
Here it is.
But stop scraping me every day because it's costing me money. And I think this is, as so often the case, Wikimedia Foundation is ahead of the rest in thinking smart about this technology.
Don't scrape me, bro.
So you too can go get that data on Kaggle. Is it Kaggle or Kaggle? I guess 2 G's. I guess Kaggle.
I would say probably Kaggle. It appears to me that it's Kaggle, but who the heck knows? Interesting. Cool. Well, we have reached the end of this episode of AI Inside. Jeff Jarvis, thank you so much for being with me for another hour of getting smarter on artificial intelligence and everything in between. The Web We Weave is a wonderful book that everybody should read. You can go to jeffjarvis.com to find that. The Gutenberg parenthesis
In paperback.
magazine. Yes, and magazine. You cannot find public parts here, though. You said that nobody read that? I didn't.
Yeah, you can probably find it on eBay. I don't know. Let's see. If you go to Amazon, as public parts was, of course, my Howard Stern joke because he wrote the book Private Parts.
Yes, indeed. Okay.
You can still get the audiobook.
Yeah, let's see. I got it.
You got it?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hardcover, $6. Paperback, $12. Yeah, these are used. You can get it on audiobook, of course.
It's Prime. No, maybe. Yeah, no. It's.
There you go.
Here. Yeah, you can.
If you want to go deep into the catacombs of Jeff's work, you can.
Cool.
And this is from 2011. So,
yeah.
Hey, you've been writing a lot of books for a long time. It's worth mentioning your whole catalog from time to time.
My ooze.
Thank you, Jeff. So much fun.
Thank you, Jason. Always.
Big time thank you to everybody for visiting the site, of course, where you can go to find all the ways to subscribe to this show, aiinside.show. And then, of course, there is the Patreon, patreon.com/AIinsideshow. And I will just go ahead and throw that up on the screen along with our amazing executive producers, Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, Dante St. James, Bono Day Rick, and Jason Knifer, by the way. He corrected me on how to say his name, and Jason Brady, our amazing patrons that support us on a deeper level as executive producers. So patreon.com/AIinsideshow. But I think that's about it, y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Jeff. It's a lot of fun. We'll see everybody next time on another episode of AI Inside. Bye, everybody.